October 21st, 1600. Dawn breaks over a narrow valley near the village of Sekigahara in central Japan. Fog rolls across the fields, and 160,000 samurai warriors prepare for battle. On one side, Tokugawa Ieyasu, the most powerful daimyo in Japan, commanding 75,000 troops. On the other, Ishida Mitsunari, fighting with 85,000 warriors to preserve the Toyotomi clan's legacy. This battle would last only 6 hours, but it would determine who ruled Japan for the next 250 years. And it would all come down to one act of betrayal. To understand Sekigahara, you need to understand what came before. For over a century, Japan had been torn apart by civil war. The Sengoku period, the age of warring states, saw hundreds of daimyo fighting for power. Then came Oda Nobunaga, who began unifying Japan through military conquest. When he was assassinated in 1582, his general Toyotomi Hideyoshi continued the work. By 1590, Hideyoshi had united Japan under his rule. But in 1598, Hideyoshi died. He left behind a 5-year-old son, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, as his heir. To protect the boy, Hideyoshi appointed a council of 5 regents to rule until Hideyoshi came of age. The most powerful regent was Tokugawa Ieyasu. And Ieyasu had no intention of serving a child. Almost immediately, Japan split into factions. The Eastern Army supported Tokugawa Ieyasu, who wanted to seize power for himself. The Western Army, led by Ishida Mitsunari, remained loyal to the Toyotomi clan. By 1600, war was inevitable. Ieyasu positioned his forces near Edo, modern Tokyo. Mitsunari gathered the Western Army and moved to block him. The two armies met at Sekigahara, a valley in the mountains between Kyoto and Nagoya. The location was strategic. The narrow valley meant the larger Western Army couldn't use its numerical advantage effectively. Troops would funnel into a confined space where superior tactics mattered more than raw numbers. Mitsunari arrived first and took the high ground. His 85,000 warriors occupied the hills surrounding the valley, giving them a defensive advantage. Ieyasu's 75,000 troops would have to attack uphill through fog and difficult terrain. On paper, the Western Army should have won. But Ieyasu had a secret weapon: political manipulation. Before the battle even began, Ieyasu had been negotiating with key Western generals. He promised them land, titles, and power if they switched sides during the fighting. Several generals agreed, but kept their betrayal secret. Among them was Kobayakawa Hideaki, a 19-year-old general commanding 15,000 troops positioned on a critical hill overlooking the battlefield. Kobayakawa had agreed to betray Mitsunari, but when the battle started, he hesitated. October 21st, 1600. 8 a.m. The battle begins in thick fog. Visibility is almost zero. Samurai warriors charge through the mist, crashing into enemy lines. The fighting is brutal. Samurai clash with katanas, spears and yari. Ashigaru foot soldiers fire muskets. Cavalry charge through gaps in the enemy formations. For hours, the battle rages. The Western Army holds the high ground. Their numbers are superior. Slowly, they begin to push Ieyasu's forces back. By midday, it looks like Mitsunari might actually win. Then Ieyasu makes his move. He orders his arquebusiers to fire on Kobayakawa's troops, not the enemy, his supposed ally. It's a signal, a threat. Make your choice now. Kobayakawa finally acts. At around 2 p.m., 6 hours into the battle, his 15,000 warriors turn and attack the Western Army's flank. The Western forces are caught completely by surprise. They're fighting Ieyasu's army in front of them when suddenly 15,000 of their own allies attack from behind. Chaos erupts. The Western Army's formations collapse. Troops don't know who to fight. commanders lose control. Panic spreads. Other generals who had secretly agreed to betray Mitsunari now see their moment. They switch sides. Thousands of Western troops suddenly turn on their own comrades. The Western army disintegrates. What was a disciplined force becomes a panicked mob. Samurai flee the battlefield. Mitsunari's commanders are killed or captured. By 4 p.m., the battle is over. Tokugawa Ieyasu has won. The casualties were staggering. Estimates suggest 30,000 to 40,000 warriors died in 6 hours of fighting. Most were from the Western army, slaughtered during the collapse. Ishida Mitsunari was captured 3 days later. He was paraded through Kyoto in humiliation, then executed. Most of the Western daimyo who survived were stripped of their lands. Their families were destroyed. Their names erased from history. Kobayakawa Hideaki, the traitor, was rewarded with more land. But he died 2 years later at age 21, possibly by suicide or assassination. His betrayal made him one of the most hated figures in Japanese history. Tokugawa Ieyasu became the undisputed ruler of Japan. 3 years later, in 1603, he was appointed shogun by the emperor. The Tokugawa shogunate would rule Japan for the next 265 years, until 1868. Sekigahara didn't just end a battle, it ended an era. The age of warring states was over. Japan entered the Edo period, 2.5 centuries of peace, stability and isolation from the outside world. All because of 6 hours of fighting and one betrayal. The Battle of Sekigahara is Japan's most important military engagement. It unified the country. It established a dynasty that lasted for centuries. And it proved that in war, politics and betrayal can be just as powerful as swords and strategy. 160,000 samurai, 6 hours of combat. One act of treachery that changed Japan forever. What other samurai battles should we cover? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more legendary battles that changed history, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Because sometimes the greatest victories are won before the first sword is drawn.